Welcome to Mountains Made Low, where we help you encounter the love of God and live well in the modern world. I'm Christine Reagan.
And I'm Dennis Mueller.
So we're back, baby. This is the first recording of 2025.
Yes, but not the first episode.
Not the first
of
episode.
2025.
But we've had kind of a hiatus.
Just a little bit. Took a little bit of break. Got a whole bunch of episodes done in order for us to take a little R&R over the holidays.
I was coming in thinking, is it going to be easy to fall back into all of this? So we'll find out. Because when you've had a break, you're like, I have to remember how to talk into a microphone,
Right.
articulate myself in an effective way.
Right. How do we record this again?
Yeah.
It's all good, though.
How were your holidays?
They were...
Here's a question. Did you get any cool gifts?
You know, I don't really exchange gifts with myself outside of my children. Like my wife and I, we get kids gifts, but not really.
Okay.
No. So like, I'm just beyond that. I don't need anything. I mean, and even in life, like birthdays are like, if I want something, I'm going to end up buying it. I'm just going to get it myself.
I do think it's kind of strange to have like adults buy gifts for each other. In so many of these like Pollyannas, you set an amount of money and then you just buy the other person off and what they're asking for.
Yeah, or just give a gift card so you can get what you want.
Yeah, so why don't I just buy what I want, you buy what you want, and we'll meet for dinner.
Now, my wife and I, we did get new wedding bands, and that was like a small fortune because of the price of gold now. So I think we are good until 2030, at least, in terms of gift exchanges.
I would check that with her, make sure she's good until 2030.
I've already told her. I said, you are good until 2030, so hers no longer fit, and mine was it was a wreck.
Well, I got an Apple Watch that I was very excited about. And I learned within about 2 hours that I can't wear something on my wrist. Like I can't, at my age, to have something
at your age
is fairly clunky. Like you've been wearing a watch for a long time.
Forever.
I don't think I could. I've never worn a watch before. And I just thought, I can't think about anything other than this thing on my wrist right now.
Well, no, it's like we have a cuckoo clock in the house.
Yeah.
And when you come in, it drives people crazy because they're not used to it. But I can sit there for 12 hours in the living room, and I'm lucky if I hear it once or twice. It's kind of like it's white noise after a while. If you try to wear it 2 weeks straight, just constantly wear it, I say you'll get used to it in no time.
Yeah. I'm not really
It's the
willing
same
to
way
put
that
in
I've
that
gotten
kind of
used
time,
to working with you over 6 years.
I knew a burn was not far down the line. But I felt so bad. I was like, this is a wonderful gift. It would be incredibly useful, but I am not tolerant enough to be able to get used to this.
Oh, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it.
Oh, we'll see.
One thing that most of us do over the holidays is, we see family, we have dinners, there's the gift exchanges, and hopefully, for you, our listeners, there was some time to worship as well. That Mass and time with Jesus, who is the reason for the season, was a part of all of those equations. So I guess in light of that, what we want to talk about today is an interesting topic. It's a topic that Christine approached, throughout a while ago, and I thought it was a great idea. But it's all on honoring your father and your mother and what that means today. So my question to you, Christine, I guess would be, what do you think the purpose of the family is?
What do I think the purpose of the family is? Well, I mean, there's so much that a family does from an emotional standpoint, from a physical standpoint. You raise your children, you try to extract their talents and their skills and their desires and all of that and fulfill all of that as much as you can. But in terms of from a spiritual standpoint, I always go back to what John Paul II said about the family. And he called the family the school of love. It really speaks to the most important work that the family does. The family is the environment in which you learn how to love, right? That's the ideal. And so that makes the family a really sacred thing.
Well, because if you think about it, the role of a parent, the role of spouses is to help one another to grow in holiness. So it is sacred. I mean, that's the goal. I'm trying to help my children to get to heaven. I'm trying to help my spouse get to heaven. That's the ultimate end game. We don't think of it in those terms, but in order for me to be able to help my children and my loved ones to grow in holiness, love is this epicenter of all of that.
Yeah, and that's where I think the sacredness comes in.
Yeah.
The culture will acknowledge that the family is important to some extent. It's a cornerstone of society and all of that. But I think there's something really just divine about the whole thing. When a child is born, parents have this revelation from God in the birth of their baby. This beautiful child is proof of God and how much he loves all of us, how much he loves those parents to give them this child. And you just see the world in a different way. You begin to understand this whole new dimension of love. But then in turn, right, love has been revealed to you, but now you need to reveal love to this child. All of that happens within the family. It's love that's spoken about, but it's really love that's modeled in the home.
It's where they learn it.
Yeah.
It's where we
And
learn
that's
it.
how the family's called to live.
I think the best case scenario is when we take a look at the family being like a mini church.
Agreed, because everything I'm talking about, the school of love, it happens in the church.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So it says, and it says that in the Catechism. It says that what the church is on a large scale is what the family is on a small scale. The mission of both is really the same. So we need a family. I mean, we know this. You know, I mean, if a child who loses their parents, life becomes very complicated very quickly for that individual. If you have a spouse who, again, loses another spouse, you know, whether it's through divorce or whether it's through illness or sickness or death, again, life becomes challenging, you know, for them. So we need a family, and God really designed it so that we're born into families. You know, you might be sitting there thinking, well, oh man, I sure don't want my family. I wish I had another family. That may be the case.
Yeah.
The bigger picture is the design here.
And the ideal, how
and the
things
ideal,
should be.
right, how
Yeah.
things should be. You know, the structure and the mission of the family really corresponds to who God is in his own self. And, you know, God is very social in himself. He's a communion of persons. He's able to manifest love because he's love himself.
Yeah, he's his own family.
Yeah, he's got his own family, Father, Son, and Spirit, all dwelling together in those three divine persons. So it's his own family of love, and he wants us to participate in that family. He wants us to participate in that love, which is why he adopts us as his sons and daughters into his family.
Yeah. And that's why he gives each child into a family.
Yes.
So that we can learn about that.
Right.
That's the whole purpose of family. Family is not something that has just arbitrarily evolved.
Right.
All of this is intentional.
And the issue is, for a lot of us, though, is that we fail to realize that we're not God.
Yeah. And I think that's where families often fail.
Yeah.
Where we have this call to be a school of love, but we don't do that perfectly because of sin. And therefore we have a love problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's such a need for forgiveness and mercy in family relationships. The fourth commandment, honor thy father and thy mother, father and mother. I think it's interesting that it's the first commandment of the 7 that deal with how we love one another.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's intentionally done. You have the first 3 commandments. If you're going with like the Catholic enumeration of the 10 commandments, because apparently there's multiple ways in which you can divvy this up. The first 3 are about God, and then the last 7 are about other people, neighbor. The commandment, the instruction to love others begins with, you have to begin in your own family.
Yeah.
That's intentional because there's something about the love, respect, and obedience given to mother and father that helps us to love, honor, respect the authority of God. And to think that we can do one without the other is foolishness because you can't.
Right.
If you want to be able to follow out this commandment to love other people, if it's not going to begin in your own house, that's why Mother Teresa says what she says. If you want to change the world, go home and love your family. You can't give to others what you're not able to give inside your home.
Yeah, that's a key point, right?
That's a big deal.
No matter how great of a parent you are, no matter how big your desire is, you just can't give your children what you don't possess yourself. If we're not fostering a culture of love within our families, it's going to be very difficult for not only us to love others, but for our children to grow up not being self-centered and not having the desire to love others.
And if you think you're going to be able to love your friends and ignore your parents and neglect your parents and speak cruelly and harshly about them, I mean, the 2 things are totally incompatible. Because there's some things that I feel very strongly about. This is one of them. This is a bit of a soapbox episode, perhaps. The state of the family and the state of the relationship between parents and their children, oftentimes their adult children, is one of the most unfortunate realities that exists right now. Mm-hmm. It just seems like love and respect of parents is something that not only children need help with, but that adults also need help with. And you don't grow out of that. You don't grow out of this commandment to honor your father and your mother. I have not always been the perfect daughter in either my childhood or adulthood. Dennis, would you agree that you have not always been the perfect
Well, you have
child?
to have imperfections in order to
Relate to the masses. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I can. I mean, there's been plenty of times where, I haven't been the best son, the best brother, the best husband, the
Yeah.
best father. And again, when I look at those times when I have failed, it's because I was thinking of none other than myself
Yeah.
in those moments.
Oftentimes when I know I'm doing it, like if I'm speaking in a way that's disrespectful, I know I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it anyway. I know
Right.
it's wrong. I still know it's wrong. But maybe my emotions have gotten the better part of me.
And you just don't care at that moment.
That's true. Absolutely. And so knowing that I do this in my own life, and I have, when I hear cruel speech and I see behavior from children directed at their parents, I often just think to myself, because I've thought it about my own behavior, gosh, isn't this a commandment? Like, what are you doing? Honor your father and your mother. We have to take this seriously. It's not just a nice suggestion on the part of the scripture. It's not a nice suggestion of God to Moses on Mount Sinai. This is the commandment that we have to not just master, but like embody and participate in order for us to even begin to love other people.
Mm-hmm.
It
No, I
has to
agree.
start with our parents.
Yeah.
And just like you said, there's a reason it's elevated to this kind of status, to 10 commandment style lawful status.
I want to I
ahead.
want to circle back to
Go
something
ahead.
that you said earlier when you were talking about, your own experience and how you just see this lack of respect that exists between parents and their children and everything. Adult
Because you expect
parents
it from
and
younger
their
children. You're like, okay, you're just learning this.
Sure.
But when I hear it from adults, I'm like, what are you doing? From
So,
good Catholic faithful adults.
but
Come on. I see a lot of resentment that comes from children towards their parents. And I think it comes from,
I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely I see it as a generational thing.
we know more than we ever have the problems that we all have, the things that we struggle with.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily doing any better with handling them.
Right.
And I think the cultural messaging is often, you have a problem? Well, it can't be your fault. We also have an accountability issue.
Right.
So don't take accountability for the problems that you have or the struggles that you're having.
It's your fault that I'm this way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can't blame yourself. You can't take accountability for it yourself. You have to blame somebody else. And let's start with your parents because they've been the closest to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a big temptation. And here's the thing, parents may be to blame. That's a possibility. I'm not
Yeah,
taking
there might
that.
be some real legitimacy to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But also no one's the perfect. If you're not the perfect person, how are you going to be the perfect parent?
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of compassion for parents out there. And maybe I feel more strongly about this than I ever have because I'm now a parent. And I realize, oh, wow, I expected perfection from my parents. And it's not possible because I can't even do it. Like, this is, how prideful must I be thinking, oh, I'm going to be the perfect parent. I'm not. And I haven't been. So I think a lot of it is you need somebody to blame. Don't blame yourself, but blame somebody else. Start with your parents.
Yeah.
Because they're an easy target. They know you maybe the longest. They know you the best in some ways. They've had the most to do with your formation.
I'm listening to everything that you're saying, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, God, 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 God. Right?
What do you
Because
mean?
what I mean by
Explain
that
that.
is like everything that you're talking about, our view of parents and how we react to them. You can take the term parents out of everything you just said and put in God.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the exact same thing.
And
We have
yeah.
such a this overarching look of God. He is so great. He's so powerful until things go wrong, and then it's like, you
Yeah.
how could you do this to me? You let me down. We turn our back on them. We write God off. There's certainly a similarity
Right.
between our relationship with God and sometimes our relationship with our parents that's mirrored. Because
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
You
you
can't
God
take
is
it
our
out on
Father.
God in the same way either. So
Yeah.
who can I take it out on? I can take it out on my parent.
It's an interesting dynamic. I mean, I haven't really looked into the psychology behind all of this stuff, but it's really, when you begin to think about it, begin to kind of see how all this maps out. There's definitely some patterns here.
And it leads us into even a larger discussion on what is often called now like family estrangement. I've noticed that in the realm of psychology, there's now like a discipline that is known as family estrangement. And it's just called like FE. And it's like its own area of study now because they said up to like 30%, almost 30% of family members are estranged from other family members.
Yeah.
And it typically manifests first often in parents and children. Yeah. But it's like its own area of psychological study now because of just how prominent it is in society.
And I'm sure many people probably experienced that over the holidays
Yeah.
where we didn't get together with so and so because of that estrangement.
Yeah.
Or maybe we were planning to go somewhere, but so and so is going to be there, and we're like, well, nope, I'm not going.
Right. Or we just sat at the same table or stood in the same room with
And
people and
said
didn't
nothing,
say anything.
didn't even acknowledge their presence. Or
Yeah.
we got together and we were a little bit of contentious.
Yeah.
We were very combative from the moment that we walked in the door because we
Yeah.
knew that so and so
We're
was
looking
going
for
to
a
be there.
fight.
We're looking for a fight.
It hasn't
Yeah.
even happened.
Yeah.
But I talked to a number of people over the holidays and I would say, oh, how's so-and-so, how's so-and-so? And multiple times I heard, oh, well, I didn't hear from them this holiday. Or, oh, they haven't talked to us in such and such a period of time. I'm like, this is like a reoccurring theme.
Right.
It's just so sad, And we're not saying that there aren't legitimate reasons why things are happening. A lot of it is circumstantial. Of all the 10 commandments, I actually think that this might be the one that we're the least serious about. Because oftentimes our parents maybe we think they're always going to be there. They're the punching bag that will always be there. And so do we really take seriously honor your father and your mother? I don't know. What do you think? Of all the 10 commandments, what's the one you think people take this? I think, yes, okay, thou shalt not kill. We take that one pretty seriously, most of us.
Yeah. I think you're onto something because if I'm in the midst of an adulterous relationship, I know but I'm saying I know that I'm wrong. If I'm lying, stealing, cheating, I know that what I'm doing is wrong. Right, murdering. I know that what I'm doing is wrong, but I don't care. And so I'm just going to continue because it's what I want. I'm doing what I want. I'm doing what pleases me. But when it comes to honoring your father and mother, I think it's a little bit of a different take. We feel so comfortable with our parents that maybe we feel free that we can just speak to them however we want to speak to them. And I don't necessarily know that we would view that behavior as being sinful.
No, I don't think that no.
Yeah.
Because if we really did, then maybe we wouldn't do it as often as we do.
Yeah.
I just think, God obviously makes it a point in the giving of the 10 commandments to say parents stand in their own category of there's a way in which they should be treated that stands alone.
And then Sirach, and this was kind of fresh on my brain because we heard this reading not too long ago at Sunday Mass. But this reading, or actually it was for the Feast of the Holy Family. It's the first reading comes from, Sirach, chapter 3, verses 2 to 16. I have that here. I just want to read it because I think it was like, it struck me. And it was funny because as soon as I heard it, I'm like giving my kids the stink eye, like, make sure you listen to this. Do you hear this?
Outside of the 10 commandments itself, it gives the most information on what it elaborates so much on the commandment, honor your father and your mother.
Really fleshes it out.
The only thing that Exodus really says is so that you will have a long life. There's a promise attached to it, but it doesn't give us that much more. Sirach gives way more.
Right.
It's like a lesson in how to do it.
So the passage begins, and it's duties towards parents. That's how it's kind of titled. For the Lord sets a father in honor over his children. A mother's authority he confirms over her sons. He who honors his father atones for sins. He stores up riches who reveres his mother. He who honors his father is gladdened by children, and when he prays, he is heard. He who reveres his father will live a long life, and obeys the Lord, who brings comfort to his mother. He who fears the Lord honors his father, and serves his parents as rulers. In word and deed honor your father, that his blessing may come upon you. For a father's blessing gives a family firm roots, but a mother's curse uproots the growing plant. Glory not in your father's shame, for his shame is no glory to you. His father's honor is a man's glory. Disgrace for her children, a mother's shame. My son, take care of your father when he is old. Grieve him, not as long as he lives. I hope my kids are listening to this right now.
That's my favorite part. This whole thing builds.
Right. Even if his mind fail, be considerate of him. Revile him not in the fullness of your strength, for kindness to a father will not be forgotten. It will serve as a sin offering. It will take lasting root. In time of tribulation, it will be recalled to your advantage. Like warmth upon frost, it will melt away your sins. A blasphemer is he who despises his father, accursed of his creator, he who angers his mother. Oof. Jeez.
Let me have that for a second. This is something. I absolutely love this. If you go back to, where are you here? Hold on. Did you turn a page at one point?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I did.
So we just read, it was Sirach 3, starting at verse 2. So we read 2 to 16 just now. But if you go back to verses 2 and 3, for the Lord sets a father in honor over his children, and a mother's authority he confirms over her sons. He who honors his father atones for sins. To love, honor, and respect your parents is a penitential act. It's something that we're going to need at the end of all things here.
And here's why, because sometimes I might not deserve that honor. Like
That's
if
true,
I'm
right.
if I'm losing my cool, or if I'm acting, I don't know, inappropriately. Think of somebody who maybe struggles with addictions in the family or something as a parent. It'd be very easy just to write me off
I'm so glad you said that.
and just to say, you know what, forget it. I'm
Right.
done. I'm done with him. But to continue to honor me, to continue to love me in spite of those failings and those shortcomings, what Sirach is saying is
It's what God does with us, by the way.
that's an act of penance. And it is. It is
Yeah.
what God does with us.
It shows just how supremely powerful love is. And to just the statement to love and honor and respect one's parents is something that can reverse the trend of sin in the world. I mean, that's worth.
That's powerful.
And I love that you brought up addiction. So my husband's father, for much of my husband's childhood before his father passed away, he was an alcoholic, very, very seriously. And I sometimes ask my husband about his father today. And I say, are you angry with your dad at all? He never speaks ill of his father, ever, ever. And there's probably plenty there that he could. And he was like, no, I'm not, and he said, I wish I had my dad here today. Gosh, he could talk about so many times when maybe he wasn't picked up one time or his dad let him down. And I mean, and it was really serious. They would sometimes stay in halfway houses together as a young kid. So, I mean, there's a lot there. And he's like, I just wish I had him here today. And I just thought, wow, like that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's probably not easy for him to say that, but that's a way in which I know he's still honoring and respecting his dad, who the world would say, oh, look what he put you through. He doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
Well, none of us deserve it.
Right.
That's the task of love. But I love that Sirach here gives us some information on how we do this. Okay, how do we honor? We honor in word and deed. Our behavior towards them, how we speak about them, how it is that we treat them. Looking into this a little bit, the word honor, like if you had to define honor, how would you define honor? Like dictionary definition.
Well,
Because the Hebrew is not necessarily what the dictionary gives us.
Right. I mean, when you think of honor, you're thinking about glory, really.
Do you think about glory?
I do. I think about like because when
Well, you just ruined my
I'm
Hebrew
sorry.
word. No.
Well, because I do. I think about like when somebody is honored, they are being held up,
Elevated. Okay. Well, then I'm glad you said glory, because that's really what it means.
right, glorified in some way.
Sometimes I think this honor your father and your mother, it's people, okay, well, if I'm just polite to my parents, that's good enough. That's not what the commandment is. And that's not what the Hebrew word reflects.
It's not about respect.
It's about, well, it is about respect.
It is, but we limit it. We stop there. It's
Right.
like, I just have to respect my parents.
It puts parents really on par with God. It does, because who should be glorified? God.
Yeah.
God is the one who is owed glory. Well, now God is telling us that's how we're meant to treat our parents, with that level of respect, with that level of love and admiration, even in their imperfection. The way in which we can really begin to honor our father and our mother, maybe like never before, is in a spirit of gratitude. What can really help us understand this? How can we really glorify our mothers and fathers? I've said it a million times, a grateful heart can give praise to God. Well, if it can do that in relationship to God, a grateful heart towards our parents can help us to glorify them in the way in which God sees fit for them to be glorified. So let's just start with the gratitude of, I'm here. You gave me life. You did the best you could. That's all anybody can do. 9 times out of 10, parents, even when they have failed us, at the time they thought they were doing the best that they could. And I think we need to start there.
Maybe they weren't even thinking that was the best that they could, but that's the best that they could muster. It was just...
I did what I thought I was supposed to do at the time.
Right.
Of course, maybe sometimes we wish that they had done things differently. They wish they had done things differently.
Yeah.
But
I just think about somebody who maybe never experienced love in their own home, or who might have experienced some type of trauma growing up. And the challenges that makes for them not to perpetuate that, not to carry that over
right.
into their own family, to where that experience somehow taints their own parenting in some way. But sometimes they're doing the best that they can given the circumstances. And so there's always something to be grateful for. I think that's what you're trying to get at. And
And
that might involve like a change in perception, I think, a little bit.
sure,
You might
you
have
love
to,
a paradigm
well,
shift.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you do. Yeah, you have to maybe change how you perceive things because that's what Jesus challenges us to do.
Yeah, we need to start meeting everybody in our life, especially our parents, with compassion and mercy, because that's how God meets us. And if we can do that, well, then we can begin to really understand what the purpose of this commandment is.
And not only that, but I think once we begin to approach those relationships with mercy, that's the only way where healing can begin. So it's my ability to be able to extend mercy and forgiveness and compassion to someone else as an act of love that I myself am able to begin the healing process.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for everybody.
You know what my dad said to me? He said, all parents need forgiveness and all children need acceptance.
Mm.
And I've thought about that a lot. Now, acceptance does not necessarily mean normalize and affirm and all that, but all parents.
We're saying that it was okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But acceptance for parents need forgiveness, children need acceptance. And that's how relationships are made.
Yeah.
Are made good. What does the catechism say?
I mean, the Catechism has a couple of spots where it talks about the importance of parents, and one of the things that they say is, and I love this. I want to read this one because I like the wording of it. But in Catechism, it's paragraph 2217, it says, "As they grow up, children should continue to respect their parents." All right, I hope my 20 somethings are listening to this now again. They should anticipate their wishes, willingly seek their advice, and accept their just admonitions. And this is where it's interesting. Obedience toward parents ceases with the emancipation of the children. Not so respect, which is always owed to them. This respect has its roots in fear of God, one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit.
So explain that a little bit for the
All right.
people that are like, because there's a difference in how we fulfill this commandment, perhaps in our youth and then in our adulthood.
Yeah.
But it's never irrelevant.
It's never irrelevant because the honor remains the same regardless of the age. We are called to continue to respect our parents regardless of age, even into adulthood and later years, because that respect is rooted in this idea of fear of the Lord. And fear of the Lord's tough. I mean, that's a biblical terminology that we're using here. It's one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And a lot of times people think that we have to be afraid of God. But really, in essence, the idea of fear of the Lord is the admission, the knowledge, and the awareness that God is God and I am not. God is God and I am not. And therefore, I should be obedient to him. I should listen to him.
Right.
I should love him and turn to him and rely on him. I need to respect him and to honor him. He's God. I ain't. I mean, that's the whole thing that got us in trouble in the first place. We try to make ourselves
Yeah.
into God and to try to usurp that. So this is where this idea of respect is rooted in. It's rooted in fear of the Lord. And so if that's where we're coming from, then we should be able, out of love, to anticipate their needs, to anticipate their wishes, to come to seek, like when you go seek godly counsel, right? And prayer and everything. So we should be able to go to seek our counsel from parents, advice from parents. And when our parents do have something to say, when they do admonish us for some of the things that we do, we should listen to it. We shouldn't just dismiss it, because I'm an adult and I'm going to do what I want.
I think that's a lot of the emotion that it causes the tension between parents and children.
Yeah.
You can't tell me what to do. I want to do what it is that I want to do. It's this authority issue. But no, we don't have to obey our parents in adulthood the way that we would as children. But we still need to respect and be grateful for their role in our life.
It's beautiful that the Catechism acknowledges that because that's the natural evolution of that relationship.
Sure.
But the idea of respect for them, that never ceases. It's always owed. And again, that respect that we're called to in this commandment, Catechism goes on to talk about how that requires us to make sure that we provide for the material, the moral support of our parents, especially in their older age when they're dealing with loneliness and distress and illness. I know people in my life who they don't get
Have
in
anything
touch,
to do with
have
their
anything
parents.
to do with their
Yeah.
parents, and their parent is older and struggling, and there's people in our neighborhood who my wife and I mean, we more my wife because of her availability, but we'll take so and so to the doctors and pick them up because their own children won't make
Yeah.
themselves available to do it.
That's just what's wild to me. And I know everyone has their own set of circumstances, and I'm not trying to cast judgment on it, but gosh, it is a commandment. I don't think that people realize that we're all going to be there one day. We're all going to be old. We're all going to be lonely. We're going to have times of distress. I hope and pray that my children are going to be there for me. It's why I'm having children, frankly, now. But I'm ensuring company for the future. But no, I mean, Sirach talks about that. If you want to have joy in the future, then this is something that it's incumbent upon you to do now for your parents.
Right.
And so
My mom listens to this podcast, so I know she's listening to this right now. So she always jokes about how, I mean, she's, in her 70s now, and she's thinking to herself, like, yeah, like there's going to come a point then where I'm going to have to move in with you. And I always joke with her, and I said, well, that's why we have the shed in the backyard. As I said, it's 10 by 14. It's nice. I said, maybe we'll run electric back there. I said, but you'll be going to bed early. You really don't need it. So, but I mean,
an in-law she shed, if
right,
you will.
an
Yeah.
in-law, I like that, an in-law she shed. But I mean, we joke about
Right.
all of those things.
Sure.
And I even joke with my own kids about, I'm betting on at least maybe I have a 25% chance that one of the four of you will take care of me in my older age, right? Hopefully all of you. And I always say, well, that's why we have so many.
That's exactly. That's
Right? We're just trying to increase our odds, but I mean, we joke about all those things, but the sad reality is I think it's a joke because we see it so prevalent in society.
and I think we're all a little apprehensive about
I
how's
think
this going
so.
to turn
Yeah.
out for
It's
all
like
of us.
it's
Ooh.
nervous laughter,
Yeah.
in a sense.
You're going to take care of me, right?
Right.
But we need to realize just how human our parents are, especially as we're adults and we have our own families. Because sometimes we can look at our parents and we put them on a pedestal and we think of them as inhuman in some way. And no, they have the exact same relational needs and physical needs and material needs and all of that we do.
Right.
And so I love the line in Sirach where it says, like warmth upon frost, honoring our parents will melt away our sins. Now, I don't know if it's just because it recently snowed here that this visual is really helpful. But when I think about the things that I wish I had not done in this world, that I know, yes, I've been forgiven of them, but maybe they still contributed and did damage in the world and the community around me. Well, the way in which I treat my parents and pray for my parents, even after they're gone, can help to melt away the things in my life that I wish I had not contributed to this world here. Give such a visual to, I can actually see the fruit of that love contributing to my own salvation.
I mean, Sirach, it's part of the wisdom tradition of the
You're not
church.
kidding. My
Right? So,
gosh.
there's some real wisdom in there, but we have to avail ourselves of it.
Yeah. It goes on to say, those who fear the Lord honor their father. If you really love God, then you will fulfill this commandment.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. There's something that we're meant to learn about our relationship with God through our earthly parents here.
That whole equation with the blasphemers thing.
I don't want to
know?
be that. I mean, blasphemers are like the lowest level in scripture
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, you have to
of
understand,
people
like,
who
when,
are.
when they use that terminology, they're putting you with the scum of the earth in terms of
You might think, but I'm not.
Sin.
I might not be treating my parents. I might not be that attentive to my parents, but I'm not, cursing the name of God. I'm not blaspheming against God. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I love that it says that when we do this kindness that we extend to others will not be forgotten. Our sins will be forgotten. We're told that, but this kindness will not be.
beautiful wisdom,
Yeah.
behind all that.
If you want a little bit more about some of the things that we talked about, there's an author, Brant Petrie, who has a beautiful reflection on this. So you can go, you can Google what he has to say about Sirach.
Is this the closest thing that you'll have to a book reference?
He's written many, many books. I'm getting a lot of books out of the way just by mentioning his name. He is wonderful. He ends his teaching, which you can go hear for yourself, on how if we fulfill this commandment, we are building our own spiritual wealth.
Yes.
Right? And it's not a selfish thing to do. It's like, if you're doing this, you're kind of ensuring your salvation. No, because your parents are receiving love and joy, and you are building your wealth up for the future.
It's
I mean,
really-
everyone wins. It's a
really,
win-win.
it's really a benefit. It's just the natural benefit of living life this
Yeah.
way. It's going to happen. It's not like you're making it happen. It's just the natural end result of living this way. Take a look at this idea of honor your father and your mother today. It's really the perfect commandment for an imperfect people, which is why I think you like it so much.
I hear that.
God's law is perfect, but we aren't.
Yeah.
We know that. We might not want to admit it in our attempt to make ourselves like God, but we are. We're not perfect. And both parents and children are sinful, and that's what really complicates things.
So I have a question for you then. So what do you say to people who have had an overwhelmingly negative experience with one or both of their parents? And really maybe they haven't had their actual biological parents play a parental role in their life. What do they do with this commandment?
Ooh, that's a really good one, because whether they know it or not, that is going to impact how they view God. So
And perhaps through no fault of their own.
yeah, through no
Yeah.
fault of their own. Yeah, yeah. So they're not exactly, maybe they're not going to be able to relate to God as a father because of their own experience with their father. But I think sometimes, I think that's one of the reasons why conversation, like there's no self-help book. I mean, they're only going to be good so far. You really have to be able to talk this out. Somebody who's been through that type of pain needs to be heard. I'm not just talking about hearing them, I'm talking about listening to them so that you can really and truly understand to the point of being able to empathize with their pain. And then from that perspective, hopefully in time, you can work to help them to develop a spirit of gratitude, to be able to see not just the negative, because sometimes we are negative, we can be very negative in our perception of things. That has a much more powerful influence on us, I think, sometimes than the good.
Sure.
And sometimes it becomes very difficult to see the forest through the trees because of all of the negative experiences that we have. But then to be able to maybe see the different blessings that may have been there, but that we didn't
Maybe
see.
to see things that you just could not see.
Yeah.
Now, what if there's nothing to be had? Just because I know there's somebody listening whose parent was wildly abusive and maybe really was never a presence in their life. I mean, what I would say in that case is that that person has not been a parent. So
Yeah.
maybe it just doesn't apply to them. But there have been other people in your life who may have played paternal roles and maternal roles. And
Sure.
so in that way, that maybe it's an adoptive parent, maybe it's a spiritual parent. Well, you can honor your father and your mother in other ways as you relate to people who did contribute
Sure.
to your
And here's the thing, like maybe I don't know my father. At the end of the day, you exist because of that parent. Like if they weren't here in this equation,
Sure. Neither you wouldn't be
you
either.
wouldn't be here
Yeah.
either. Even in a very primal, very base way, there is something to be grateful for. Now,
Right.
to be able to see that, that's
Right.
not easy. Right?
That's why we're
That-
uncomfortably laughing right
Right.
now.
That is not easy to be able to see that, or even to get to a point where I'm able to even
Right.
acknowledge that. But ultimately, it's there.
It is. Yeah.
It is there. But I like what you said about the fact that, I mean, sometimes there's other people in our lives who play a parental role, but maybe aren't necessarily our biological or adoptive parents.
Right. A lot of this, I think, goes back to just like respecting your elders too. This
Well, and
honor your
that's how it's
father and your
approached in
mother.
school, right? I mean, don't they talk about that in school? Like when
The
they're
catechism
presenting
actually
it?
does.
Yeah.
There's a catechism bit. It talks about how teachers, elders. It says catechists at one point. Did you
Yeah,
know that?
yeah.
So I'm like, you should have this on your wall or something in your office. Like, hey, honor your father and your mother. Honor your catechist.
And your catechist, right? Yeah.
But it's honor the people who have transmitted the faith to you,
Right.
who have participated in your school of love. But I like that you said that you can do this even if all parents have failed in one way or another, and we can at least minimally be thankful for the life that we have, and then look to God as our Father to heal the wounds that need to be healed.
Saying that, it's very easy. The words are easy to say, but living that out and getting to that point takes work.
Yeah, there's a lot of grace
And
that
so,
has to
like,
be involved.
don't think for one second we're just minimizing
Oh,
all this
no.
stuff with words. There's the healing for us to be able to even get to that point. If we had difficulty with our parents
Yeah.
in that type of a fashion, maybe where they weren't present in our life, or it was just a complicated, very difficult, or very traumatic relationship.
Sure.
That healing takes time.
Yeah.
To be able to get there. But God gave us this commandment really in a fallen and sinful world because he's not setting us up for failure.
Yeah, he wouldn't tell us to honor our imperfect parents if we couldn't do it. The other thing is that I think people should know that, and the Catechism talks about this too, that honoring your father and your mother doesn't mean that if they asked us to sin, we should sin. Right? It stops short of that.
Right.
We can still honor and respect our parents.
Yes.
But if they're asking us to do things that are against the law, God's law, right?
Right.
Let alone civil law, then no, we wouldn't be dishonoring them if we chose not to do it.
If anything,
right?
the
We're not
loving
supposed to.
thing, the honorable thing to do would be to the spiritual works of mercy, to instruct the ignorant, to admonish the sinner. Sometimes we need to call a spade, and that's a loving act itself. My dad died in 2017, and there was talk. I mean, he was talking about he wanted to have his ashes spread and everything. And I looked at him and I told him, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I said, find somebody else to
Yeah.
do it. I'm not doing it. Yeah, so it's...
And you didn't feel like you were breaking the commandment
no.
because you said no, because you
No.
should have said no.
Right.
I
So-
still love you and honor you.
Right. So sometimes we're asked to do things and we know that it's wrong, and it's not dishonoring your parent when we
Right.
say no, I'm not going to do that, or no, you shouldn't do that.
But it's not just saying yes to their every whim.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about.
The honor is to really love them, and to love them, you want what's best for them.
And then think well of them.
Yeah.
I think that's what people need to. I certainly need to do it more in my life, but just think well of your parents.
So if
Because
you
the culture will say, don't do it.
right.
They'll say, oh, they wronged you. Dig deep enough. Find out how they traumatized you. My gosh.
So if you were to offer a final summation,
I would repeat what I said before. All parents need forgiveness and all children need acceptance. But when I say acceptance, it does not mean to just consent to whatever the child wants.
Right.
That's not what I mean. We're talking about loving, intimate acceptance. That's what we're talking about.
and sometimes loving somebody means saying no, or don't put me in a home.
My dad always said it in the context of like, because you never know what you're going to get with a child, right? Like my son is already very different than who I thought he would be.
It's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah. Parents need to accept who that person is as being different from who they are.
Right.
Because yes, like if I would love for him to play tennis and then go to Wimbledon, and I could ride that train all the way to retirement glory if I wanted to.
Sure.
I don't think that's who he is. He may go to the moon, and I did not expect him to go to the moon. And so I need to accept his gifts, his talents, his individuality.
So there's acceptance on both.
That's what it.
Both
That's
parts,
what it really
on
means.
part of the parent and a part of the child.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But I think it's more important for the child to know that who they are is enough.
Yes.
Whoever God has made them to be is enough.
Yeah.
And then knowing that not all parents do things perfectly. As the child gets older, they need to forgive the shortcomings of the parents, because then they're going to enter into their own parenthood and they're going to need the same thing. So that's what I mean by acceptance.
Yeah, not just
It
like
has to do with their essence, right?
yes.
Who God created
Yeah,
them
who
to
they
be.
are.
Lean into the gratitude, lean into the forgiveness if it's necessary. Everyone's sinful. It's always necessary.
sound words from Deacon Dirk.
Deacon Dr. Bob.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of good nuggets, and that's something that is very true. All right. We will see you next week. I don't know what we're talking about. We'll see you next week.
All right. God bless.